The worker should be encouraged to make suggestions for the improvement of methods and handsome rewards prescribed for the savings that accrue to the company by the adoption of the suggestion. The quick examination of suggestions made by the worker and the reward and appreciation that he earns are certain means of creating a sense of participation. A suitable grievance scheme should also be introduced, and its implementation watched from time to time by the managing director to ensure that grievances are attended to promptly. The above schemes would largely help in creating a feeling in the worker of security and of participation. However, as a means of creating healthy labor relations, most important is the creation of job satisfaction. Job satisfaction flows from good conditions of work and the opportunity given to the worker to learn more and educate himself for more responsible work. Courses for giving insight into new techniques enable the worker to enlarge his outlook. A library for workers use in which the latest technical journals relating to the type of industry in which he is employed should be made available. The workers should be encouraged to make use of the library and the requisite facilities provided. The worker should be encouraged to communicate to the management the ideas gathered by him and the management's appreciation communicated to the worker. Trade unions in India are not playing their part in increasing productivity and in the creation of a healthy industrial climate. They have been largely preoccupied with advancing the cause of labor and have been committed on the outmoded principle of class warfare. With rare exceptions, leadership of trade unions is in the hands of political parties who have been using them for political ends. The attitude as it exists today, whereby trade unions are oriented to furthering the cause of labor only and taking full advantage of the guaranteed liberties to constantly indulge in agitation and inculcating a feeling in labor that they are being exploited is not leading to healthy industrial relations or to the creation of a climate which the aims of trade unions would be to increase production and productivity. The prime needs of the country is to achieve a higher standard of living for all our countrymen, for which more and more goods and services have to be produced cheaply and efficiently. In this endeavor, the trade unions should play their part in the interest of the country. Good drinking water is not merely pure water, it must contain certain dissolved substances which are beneficial to human health. Water is a basic need of man. Without water, there would not be life of kind on the earth. It is difficult to establish the exact degree of importance of water to man. In this regard, in his hand climb of the ladder of civilization, some tend to measure the progress of a country by the amount of water it consumes, though such a measure may not always be correct. Man's progress will be badly affected if water is not readily available to him in adequate quantity and quality. Water is needed for drinking, cooking, washing, bathing, gardening, irrigation, and for industries. Among all these needs, drinking gets the first priority. Normally, if a water is fit for drinking, it will be suitable for all other purposes. Suppose one is asked what type of water he would like to drink. His immediate reply would be that he would like to drink pure water. When asked to explain the meaning of pure water, he might say that drinking water should not contain any visible impurities. Pressed further, he might explain that by drinking the water he should not get sick, but some may be surprised when told that it is not enough for drinking water to be pure and safe, but it also should contain some dissolved substances which are beneficial to human health. Sometimes they may have to be added to a water source if they are absent. Chlorination of water supplies is one such example. Standards are necessary to know whether a particular water is fit for drinking or not. They aim at standardizing drinking water qualities. Every country prescribed its own drinking water standards. The standards of drinking water laid down by the United States of America are considered to be most strict, but all countries cannot afford to have such strict limits. The more strict the standard set, the cost is the treatment of water. In India, the Ministry of Health, Government of India have laid down standards of drinking water. In India, all the public water supplies are expected to meet these standards. Germs in the water are found where there is a presence of suspended matter such as clay. Apart from the harmful effects on health, the very appearance of turbid water makes people reject it. You represent a community which has really a great part to play in the industrial development of this very large country. One thing that I have noticed with great regret within the last few years is a general fall in our standards which has come possibly in the wake of the war. It may be that we ourselves are weak and the fall has come because of our own weakness. Those who are engaged in administration or business or in any other kind of public work have all realized this fall in our moral standards. Much of our present difficulties may be attributed to that. I do not say we are worse than other people, but we want a higher degree of morality in our daily life, in our business relations, and in the relations of a political and social nature. I have noticed this fall and I am taking the liberty of drawing the attention of the people to it. For example, if you analyze all our industrial troubles, you will find a general competition on the part of all to make as much profit as they can out of the present situation. If you go into the question of black marketing, you will find that it is not possible to blame any particular group or class for that. I have said more than once that the dealer and the producer are equally to blame. There will be no black marketing if producers do not send what they produce into the black market. If the consumer also does not purchase, there will be no black market. The dealer, the producer, and the consumer all have a share in making the black market flourish. I would therefore suggest that you, on your part, should do your best to raise moral standards so that others may also follow your example. I have asked other people to do the same, and I cannot do better than ask you also on the question of amendments to the bill relating to the elections. I myself am not fully conversant with the exact position at the present moment, but you have made representations which I am sure will receive the attention of the government. A matter like this is in the hands of government, and I am sure that government will consider it in all its aspects. Once again, thank you very much. The impression is still widely held that a banking account is a luxury for the well to do. On the contrary, the majority of people who use the services of a bank are persons of moderate means. A man or woman need not hesitate to ask a bank to open a current account merely because the balance maintained is likely to be small. The full range of the bank's services is available to every customer. It may be thought that a wife's bank account is subject to her husband's scrutiny. It is as well as to record, therefore, that all transactions between a bank and its customers are absolutely secret, and neither a husband nor a wife can obtain from the bank any information about the other's account without express permission. Any adult person can open a current account with a bank by applying to the manager of the branch with which he desires to deal. Accounts are also opened for persons under the age of 21 who are old enough to understand the use and drawing of checks. The bank will usually require an introduction from another customer or a personal reference. When the few simple formalities have been complied with, the customer may pay into his account as often as he desires during banking hours at any branch of that bank in Bombay and Pune, or for that matter at the branches of almost every other bank in the Indian territory. He can cash checks whenever he wishes to do so at the branch of the bank where he has his account. Arrangements can be made for him to cash his check at other branches too on request. Every new customer is provided with a check book and a paying in book. Each page of these books has a counterfoil. When the customer wishes to make a payment into his account, he writes in the paying in book the date, his name, and the amount of the checks, postal orders, notes, or cash He is handing over the cashier who receives this money initials the counterfoils and returns the book to the customer who thus has a complete record of his deposits. When the customer withdraws money from the bank by writing a check, he fills in the details of the transaction on the checkbook counterfoil and so provides himself with a complete record of money spent. Once again, I am pleased to preside over your annual general meeting, and I am again able to report a successful year's trading. Although the available balance is less than for the previous year, the net profit for the year under review is 32,000 rupees, and from this figure the sum of 19,000 rupees has been allocated for taxation. In their report, the directors set out the manner in which they propose to deal with the available profits, and they are pleased to recommend a final dividend of 12.5%, making a total of 17.5% for the year, which compare with 33 and a third percent before the company doubled its capital by the capitalization of its reserves in December last. During the period since 1979, when we became a public company, more than 50,000 rupees has been retained out of profits for re-equipment and the more efficient running of the business. Your company has paid the same dividend over those 7 years, and this year the distribution is slightly higher. I think you will agree with me. These figures indicate that your company's business is very sound and in good order. During the year under review, profit margins were reduced in an effort to absorb extra costs and avoid passing these onto the customer in an endeavor to limit existing prices. Your board continues to pursue the policy of installing modern machinery because it is their view that only in that way can they compete on the best of terms. Within the last 2 months, additional land and buildings to the company's works have been acquired, which will improve the layout of the works and thereby increase efficiency. Plant and machinery to the value of 8,000 rupees has been installed during the year in accordance with the company's policy to which I have just referred, and we still have machinery to the value of approximately 16,000 rupees on order. I will conclude by expressing my thanks to our staff and work people for the way they have carried out their duties and my appreciation of the loyal support I have received from my colleagues on the board. Yet, at its preliminary meeting held in the last week, the investigation committee discussed the matter. As you are aware, this committee has been specially set up by the President to inquire into the matter and put from recommendations for the consideration of the Board of Directors. At this time, it will not be out of place to take a review of the circumstances that led to the present difficult situation and have caused us all this trouble. In the month of April last year, tenders were invited from leading firms for the construction of our new administrative buildings. These tenders were examined by a committee of experts which recommended that the committee of experts awarded to the present firm of builders as their tender was found to be quite competitive. Another important factor which influenced the committee in taking this decision was that this firm enjoyed a very good reputation in the construction field. They were known to be efficient in their work and had completed many important projects successfully. Therefore, your board of directors awarded the contract to this firm. The work started quite smoothly and went on without any trouble for about 8 months. Thereafter, the problem began. It was found that more and more delays were taking place, and the time schedule agreed upon in the contract was not being followed. Then, all of a sudden, without giving any reason or intimation, the builders completely stopped the work when they were pressed for the reason for stopping the work. They put forth the excuse that they were experiencing financial difficulty. When it was pointed out that their action was against the term and conditions stated in the contract, the firm pleaded for consideration as the circumstances were beyond their control. In the interest of the work and taking into consideration the fact that the difficulties being experienced by the firm appeared, we took a sympathetic view and granted them extensions in the time limit. Now the firm is demanding increased rates for the work, which is not only unfair but also amounts to taking undue advantage of our leniency. This attitude on the part of the firm is certainly not in the interest of building a good business relationship before the matter takes any unpleasant turn. We would like to settle this problem without any bitterness and hope the firm will also adopt this attitude. It is indeed a privilege to welcome you this evening to the 8th annual general meeting of the company, and I do so with great pleasure. The annual report and the audited statement of accounts for the year ended 30 September 1985 having been already circulated to you, I shall, with your permission, take them as read. During the year under report, your company has achieved tremendous growth. The turnover has increased, and so as the gross profit after providing for depreciation, taxation, dividend, investment, allowance, reserve, and transfer to general reserve. The surplus has been carried forward. During the year, your company has developed the new product. The company's marketing system has been streamlined. I am sure you will be glad to know that the products of your company have a greater demand in the market than the similar products of other manufacturers. This achievement of your company is due to the strict quality control maintained by it. Owing to the excellent results during the year, the company has paid interim dividend at 10%, and the proposal for final dividend at 8% is before you. The financial base of the company is very strong, with reserves standing at rupees 180 lakhs, and I am pleased to say that the directors have decided to issue bonus shares, for which the proposal is before you for approval, subject to further approval of the controller of capital issues. During the 3 months working of the current year, the company's turnover has registered an increase of 63%. Good results are expected during the current year too, due to various economic measures announced by the government favoring industrial growth in the country, and in the various steps taken by your company for diversifying its products and improving quality. In view of this position, the company expects not only to maintain the dividend but also to increase the rate of dividend. As I mentioned earlier, demand for our products is growing. I assure you we will certainly take the necessary steps to increase our sales further. I take this opportunity to thank all our workers for their cooperation and hard work during the year. I also thank my colleagues on the board. Before concluding, I also thank all for having spared your valuable time for attending this annual general meeting. Coming to the subject of education, I would like to confine myself to school education. It is true that after independence, we have improved education quantitatively, and if we go by statistical data, the number of schools and the enrollment therein and the number of students coming out of schools and colleges, the increase has been manifold. This is no doubt a good sign that we are going on right lines. But this is not everything. Mere numbers do not improve quality of education. It is high time we should concentrate on the improvement of quality of education. Is that we are still following after 39 years of independence the same system that was introduced into our country by the British. The British introduced a system of education wherein they could train people to staff their offices with clerks and administrators. After 39 years of independence, after appointing a number of education commissions, have we changed the system of education that exists in our country? We have not done everything appreciably in this connection, and the same system is still being followed. That is one of the main reasons why we have so many educated unemployed. They are fit only to be clerks or administrators. When the British were there, they were very careful in giving recognition to new schools because they knew that if the number of schools was increased, they would not be able to absorb all those students in their offices, and consequently educated unemployment would be there. But we have increased the number of schools. A district where we had only 10 high schools has now more than 200 high schools, and an area which had probably only 20 or 30 elementary schools before has now got more than 200 primary schools. So, educational opportunities have improved. The number of people who are educated and who are coming out of the schools and colleges is increasing. Therefore, unemployment among the educated has been increasing day by day. Coming to adult education, as one honorable member has been telling us, the number of adult illiterates is 60% of our population in elementary schools, and even those who pass out of elementary schools, or at least say about 50% of them lapse into illiteracy. I welcome you to this meeting. The report of your directors and the audited accounts of the company for the year 1977 have been in your hands for some time. With your permission, I take them as read. You will be happy to notice from the statement of accounts that your company, after a serious setback during the previous years, has forged ahead and consolidated its position. In my address from the chair for the last 3 years, I had mentioned about the recession in the diesel engine industry and our efforts to come out of it. The continued recession had made it rather difficult for me last year to make a reasonable forecast for your company. However, you would be pleased to see that the results for the period under review have been quite satisfactory. Your company has made a profit of rupees 1 crore after providing for taxation, depreciation, development, rebate, and doubtful debts. Last year, due to unfavorable conditions, your directors could not declare any dividend on equity shares. However, this year, due to better performance, your directors have recommended a total dividend of rupees 1.25 per equity share for the financial year ended on 13th June last, covering a total period of 15 months. The management has always been to give a fair return to the shareholders on their investment. This year, it was found that the conditions were favorable and held out a promise of increase in sales and profit. The directors declared an interim dividend in the month of June and followed it up by a final dividend. The fortunes of our country are still, to a large extent, dependent on the nature or inadequate rains in the country during the last 3 to 4 years, followed by drought last year, appreciably disrupted the growth of the economy of the company. Both the industrial as well as the agricultural production suffered very heavily. Shortage of electric power in many of the states also contributed to this fall in production in all fields. It is a matter of great satisfaction to us that our engines come in handy as prime movers for generating sets at this critical juncture. The demand for our engines for generating sets increased considerably. In time, we would have been able to meet this full demand easily. When a person is selected for a job, it is natural that he should be given a letter of appointment. Though I have said this, there would be a large number of employers who neglect doing this in India. Very often, persons work in offices without having ever received an appointment letter. An appointment letter should state the fact of appointment. It should be specific on several matters